Wonderful to see you again, my friend. I'm glad that you've decided to meet me back here. Indeed. Shall we go in?
Well, hello again, you two. Just take a seat anywhere and I'll be right with you.
Thank you, Lena. Take your time, my dear.
Thanks, love.
Pick wherever you would like to sit. I shall follow you. Same as yesterday. Speaking of, I am very grateful for you keeping my secret. It's very rare to come across someone such as yourself.
Well now, looks like you've got a new friend, Count. What can I get for you two?
Yes, it seems I have. I'll have the usual.
The usual for the Count? And the same for your friend? Gotcha. Be back in a tick.
Last night? Well, yes, it did happen. In fact, you are the first person to really know the truth of who I really am. Hiding in plain sight really does fool most people, yet there are a few who catch on. Usually, the reaction goes one of three ways: attack, go mad, or ask to be turned.
There we are. I'll leave that to you then. Just let me know if I can get anything else for you.
Thank you, my dear. As I was saying, I had sensed you were different when you walked in the other night. Someone very trustworthy. Someone I can call a friend. I'm glad to know you are relieved to hear that, although I'd prefer not to drain someone I considered a friend. This? Oh, red wine. A Sol Rouge 2015 Syrah. Sorry to disappoint. To keep appearances, I try to avoid the obvious blood drink in public, and yes, I do have to drink blood in order to sustain myself. I can see you want me to tell you more of my story. Well, what I have told you so far is all true. As I've said, you're someone I knew I could trust. Before we were so rudely interrupted last night, I believe I had just stepped inside the castle, hidden in the Hoy forest. There she stood, at the top of the staircase, her dark eyes staring back towards me. I bowed in respect to my gracious hostess as I introduced myself to the customs of my homeland, all the while hoping to learn of her name in return.
Greetings, Prince Vlad Dracula Tepish of Wallachia. I am Lilith Sira, but you may address me as Lilith. Please, follow me to your room.
Upon hearing her name, I felt a sense of ease. Quietly, I followed as she guided me through the enormous castle. Arriving at my room, she bid me good night as I retired to the bedchamber she had provided for me to rest that night. Try it as I might, my sleep was disturbed by the screams of the men I had lost in the forest that surrounded me. Sometime during the night I awoke to the feeling of being watched, like a hungry predator eyeing its prey before they pounce. Unable to return to bed, I gathered my wits and began searching the mysterious castle that I was given sanctuary in. I found myself standing back at the grand staircase, where a painting of Lilith hung. Her dark eyes followed my every move as I stepped closer to her portrait. My hand raised to touch the frame, doubting the surrealness of where I was at the time. So focused I was on the picture, I had failed to sense Lilith walking from the shadows, which caught me by surprise.
Please forgive me. I didn't mean to startle you. Only merely wanting to know if you were able to get any rest.
Regaining my composure, I informed her that my sleep was restless, due to the events leading up to this point. That I heard the screams of my men that I lost in the forest haunting my dreams. All I wanted was to protect my people from the invading Turk forces. She watched me quietly for a moment before she spoke to me in comfort.
The darkness that dwells within the Hoya indeed haunts this forest. Some would say cursed, as anyone foolish enough to enter will find difficulty finding their way out. Many travelers have lost their lives within these woods for such a long time.
Closer she stepped towards me as she continued.
You are very fortunate, Prince, to have made it to my home. I have heard of the Turks invading the surrounding areas. Even had the foolish notion to send a hunting party after you and your men had went into this untamed dark forest. However, a cowardly Turk did run.
In concern, I asked if they had tried sending in more. She stood there and smiled.
No, and I doubt they would try again.
At this time, I had noticed Lilith was just a step away from where I stood. Her eyes locked onto mine. My mind froze as I began to feel my body grow heavy, her words echoing in my head.
Rest for now, Prince Vlad.
Upon the sound of her words, I felt as if I was falling backwards into the black mire of sleep, as I was unknowingly placed under. I awoke sometime in the evening, my mind a fog to the previous night's events. Shortly after, a knock came to the door. Lilith had entered, gliding ever so gently to where she stood in the sitting area of the room. Upon seeing her, the fog soon lifted as I began to remember where I was and who she was. I made my way into the sitting area to greet her. She motioned for me to sit, as I gathered up the courage to inquire of what had happened that night.
Last night. Well, it seems that due to the weight of the troubles bearing down upon your shoulders, that your body demanded rest.
As she spoke this, she glanced towards the doorway, where a servant came carting food and wine.
For now, I insist that you help yourself and regain the strength that you will need for the days to come.
Lilith watched as the servant placed trays of food upon the table we sat at. I didn't realize how hungry I was until that moment. While I ate, she gazed in thought, waiting for the right moment as the servant walked out of the room. It wasn't until I finished when she broke the silence.
There is something I must ask of you. An offer, if you will.
By all means, Doamname.
Stay as my guest, and you shall not want for anything.
Upon hearing this, I was torn. Someone of her beauty asked me for such a proposal, yet I knew I couldn't abandon my kingdom in its time of need. My gaze casted downward, as I had to decline her offer. I spoke of my duties as a prince to my kingdom and my people's safety.
I see. I must commend you on your loyalty to your subjects. Such a rare trait during these dark times. A trait I find alluring.
She leaned back in her chair before she asked a question I had not expected from her.
I must know, what are your plans for the Turks invading your homeland?
A simple question, of course, yet somehow it sent a chill through my very soul. I had explained the events of how the Turks had cut off our trade routes, and how the scouts I had sent had not returned. I went on to tell her how this prompted me to take a small group of men and travel out to find safe passage for those unable to fight for what I believed to be the final assault on my castle. I am but one man with only a small battalion standing in the way of a massive invasive force with no reinforcements. Hope was a luxury for someone with faith. Forgive me. No, it's fine, I assure you. Just old memories dredging up the emotions to the surface. Lilith, sitting forward, had asked me once again.
I ask this once more. What did you plan on doing to the Turks when they invade your homeland?
She was smart enough to know the situation at hand. I began to discuss the plans I had made with the generals before I had left with my men to find safe passage. As I explained the battle plan, I saw a hungry look in her eyes as her stare bore into me, a powerful fire dancing behind her dark crimson eyes. After I had finished, she leaned back once more, a hand to her chin as she contemplated the answer I gave to her. A moment later, the servant returned, bowing low before her, while not even giving me a second thought. I watched as no words were exchanged between them yet. It seemed as if Lilith understood why he entered in the first place. Just as quietly as the servant entered, he had left just the same, after gathering the empty dishes on the table before us. Confused, I looked at her. Slowly, a grin touched her lips, breaking the silence with one last offer.
Prince Vlad Dracula Tapish, I offer this chance only once. Serve under me, and I will rid you of the Turks that invade Wallachia.
I was stunned. Her offer couldn't be as simple as this. My mind wondering how she would be able to complete such a task. Speechless as I was, she spoke once again.
I understand this offer is much to consider. I will have my servants aid you as they take you back to your castle. As protection, they will also guard you until you give your answer. However, if you fail to give me an answer in time, I can no longer give you aid.
My hostess, beautiful and intimidating, I told her I could not risk the safety of her and her bodyguards due to the Turks' retaliation. She stood from the chair and walked to my side. Placing a hand on my shoulder, she said with confidence,
I will be following close behind with reinforcements. They would be foolish to try anything against me.
I stood, unable to comprehend the aura of conviction she held to go against trained soldiers meant for war. Her dark eyes glittered as she understood the look on my face.
Looks can be deceiving. Trust me, as I have gone through many battles myself.
I could sense that she knew the art of war extensively. Bowing before her, my gratitude unyielding toward her. In return, I had asked what I could do for her, as I trusted her completely. The corner of her lips curled ever so slightly.
Just think about my offer. When the time is right, I will be there by your side when you're ready to give me your answer.
I stood watching her leave the room, only to pause before she did, turning towards me.
We leave in an hour. Be ready.
5 minutes for last call.
Well, look at that. It seems that the hours have flown by once more. Let me give you a ride home. Don't worry, I can't enter without an invitation. Wonderful. I'll bring the car around. Let me take care of the tap. Wait right here. I'll be back with the car. Where to? All right, got it. Any plans for tomorrow? I see. Well, how about I offer to cook dinner and finish the story? It would be an honor to cook for you as a way of showing my gratitude for keeping my secrets, as well as being a good friend for listening to my story. Here is the address to where I am staying. I will have dinner ready by 6. Good night, my friend.